Hi everyone, I'm Sydney,
And I'm Ryan.
and this is our video podcast called WIPTHENRIP.
Then, for episode 2, we have guest Christina Ballantyne, Los Angeles based artist, originally from Houston, and founder of Ouroboros. Check it out.
I do want to start with the gripes. Okay, so Christina, what's frustrating, broken, or irritating in art and culture right now? Or you could even give us the LA Goss talk, or however you interpret this question.
I mean, I'll do one that maybe everyone thinks about. And it's twofold because this will be posted on Instagram. But I feel like Instagram with artists is frustrating sometimes. It's been great because I've connected with so many people. That's how you and I met, Sydney. And it'll feel like I know honestly through the internet that I don't know. And actually I meet them and I'm like, we are friends.
Yeah.
But in other ways, it kind of flattens work. I feel like a lot of it, we're all like loosely connected to each other in a more superficial way rather than deeply meeting up and talking about art. You know, all day I've seen like 100 paintings, but have I even like really seen anything like closely? And I was reading Notes from the Woodshed. I mentioned that to you guys by Jack Whitten. And he's talking all about how they go to Cedar Tavern in New York and they meet up and everyone would talk about like they had all these passionate conversations about art and like you just walk in and have a tab and hang out there all day. I mean, that's definitely me romanticizing it some too, I'm sure. But now it's like a comment.
Crazy fun fact for you. The Cedar Tavern, like the actual physical bar, lives in Austin now. There's a restaurant here that refurbished it. And I always think it's this sort of, I think it's really cool, you know, but it also is this sort of zombie, right, of exactly what you're talking about, where it's definitely it's not a space that artists are necessarily congregating. And, you know, it's just such an interesting symbol in the way that you're talking about with, you know, the state of art right now. I actually wanted to ask you to talk more about like how you think about your own work going on Instagram, you know, within those confines or however you want to put that, like the like, yes, more democratic version, but also, I don't know, like maybe populist in a not necessarily great way.
I mean, I will say for myself, I feel like I see mostly benefits.
Yeah.
You know, like so many more people can see things. I've made sales through it. Just even people seeing what I'm up to. If you're a writer, like you can't just post it on, people are going to read it. So I feel like it is really nice in that way. On a personal level, I try to just keep it as a business tool. Like for my own art, I try not to think too much, like post it and you know, like you feel good when you get the serotonin from the comments.
Sure.
Like there's good things in there, but I think it's probably worse. I think like the greater effects that it has on like society and talking about art and all those types of things. And it's just like, I feel like I'm looking at an art LinkedIn plus like world atrocities, like right next to each other and just scrolling really fast. So I think limiting that is just super helpful.
Well, do you brick your phone or anything like that? Like, do you enforce limits?
I don't do anything like that. I try to not look at it before the studio.
Oh, that's
and never in the studio. I can never pick up my phone and look at it while I'm painting or anything.
Do you have other input in the studio? Like, do you listen to music or anything like that?
I do listen to music. I actually just moved studios in LA. I was in a studio for 3 years with no windows, and it was getting very hard. Yeah, it was rough. And then I moved to this area, and it's like full of cars tinting windows and like people selling speakers and stuff. So it's like very loud, and I'm already hearing all of their music. It's like a lot of throwbacks. Some of it's good. I heard like Shaggy the other day.
Nice.
A lot of songs in Spanish. So it's actually if I take my headphones off, I'm still listening to music, which
That's
is
funny.
At first I was like, how is this gonna go? And I was like, oh no. But then it's actually been pretty fun.
Do you feel like it's getting into the work? Like, does it influence the way you paint?
I don't think so. I think I've only been there for 2 weeks, so
Okay.
I don't know that much yet. But just wanting to be there way more often is nice, and I actually feel a little less isolated knowing that everyone's around there. And so
The space looks crazy. Like it looks like a warehouse, even though I know it's not.
An industrial building. So I share it with Ish too. Ish is my
Right.
husband.
Yes.
We're also an artist, Ryan.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're sharing the space and it's just been great. I'm like, I can actually hang out there. At the other one, I was like in that, like, I didn't even know it was bad because I feel like I'm someone where like if I get sick, I don't really know I'm sick, and then I'll be like, oh wow, I cannot be like this. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like I'm not super aware at the time, and then later I'm like, oh my god, I feel better. But I would just go outside, like look at the sky, and it was kind of sketchy around there. So then I just close the door and go back in, like every 2 hours, and I'd be like, and then I would do the night before I would even kind of dread going to the studio.
Mm.
But it was just somewhat become the norm. I mean, I was lucky to still have one. I know I don't want to sound like a huge brat. But this one's just so much more connected with like life. So yeah, I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, I've been working out of my garage most of this year, and it's such a bittersweet thing because I've got two kiddos, and it's like on the one hand good because I can, what you're talking about with life being right there, right? It's like my life is always there, but then also there's this challenge to actually disconnect and get deeper into the work. And it sounds like it remains to be seen whether or not your work will end up being like super influenced by that, or if you'll just end up having sort of a.
How long have you been in the garage?
Just since the beginning of this year, and
No.
yeah, it's new, and yeah, it's fine. It's fine as far as saving money. Um,
Yeah. And can do if you're busy and working. It's also just like it's nice to be able to slip in for an hour, I'm sure.
yeah, it just doesn't have the boundaries, right? In the same way
Yeah,
where, yeah,
really.
because there's also, laundry out there and all kinds of other shit. So,
Yeah, yeah. And you
um,
can walk back inside.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So the gripe primarily is that social media is changing and perhaps fucking up the way that, I mean, not only we process art, but also what you said about like art, like beautiful things next to the worst atrocities that are happening. Maybe this is, I don't know, too early or out there or something, but that does make me wonder on that same point about things getting into the work. Does any of that sort of outside world come into your thinking in the paintings themselves too, or is that also, Sydney and I were talking about how your work has, I'm trying to remember the word you used, but I was thinking particularly the slightly older work has this like kind of fairy tale quality to it, some of it. There's a kind of magic and what's the word I want, I guess just a certain type of beauty that feels like a little dreamy. It feels a little bit, subconscious. And so I'm wondering, like, do those very conscious, like, topical things ever get in there? And also, is that read of your work even, does that even sound accurate to you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't heard fairy tale, but I definitely don't mind that. Like, I like that interpretation.
I can tell you exactly why I went to fairy tale. I'd have to pull the painting up again, but there's a fence in one of the older paintings that looks just like the unicorn tapestry.
Are there two figures in it?
Yep.
Maybe. Yes,
But
that
was
one
that
was very tailish. Yeah, that was from I
okay?
think that was long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. 5 years ago.
Okay, that sounds
Um,
right.
yeah, but I could definitely see that with that painting. I think it used to more on a conscious level go into the work. Also, I feel like just as a human, when news relates to you a little more, it affects you more.
Mm.
You know, whether
Yeah.
that's a good or a bad thing, it's just like that's how it is. So, and I'm Lebanese, so I have family in Lebanon and everything happening there.
Yeah.
I think when I was in now, my all my feed is literally like Middle East Eye, like Al Jazeera.
Yep.
And so I think it definitely, and especially when I'm making figurative work, there's iconography that had more charge of a specific thing. So I feel like that was definitely going into it, especially at first. People there, like in my lifetime, I wasn't around during the Civil War there, and different things like that. So I feel like it was the first time that, as a family member, I was like, every day getting really anxious about it.
Yeah,
And
I feel
yeah,
like I want to ask under the circumstances everybody's okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's just so horrific and disgusting, all of what's going on right now. And yeah, so you're saying it gets in there, but not necessarily in a way where you're not
Yeah,
directly. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah. Less now, to be honest. Like there was more, because I feel like my work's almost gotten even less literal and more
Mm.
bodily. I mean, I'll talk about that later, but so I think a little bit less so now. But my work evolves and changes quite a bit, if you haven't like noticed.
Yeah, I feel like your work has a combination of like lightness and heaviness. Like with the colors, like there I mean, yes, with the colors, but also like with the aura. Like I feel like there's always like a glimmer of light, or I
Hmm.
was describing to Ryan like maybe they sometimes feel heavenly in a way to me, or
That's the word you used. Yeah.
yeah, or ancestral landscape. Like I do feel like ancestry or like family ties, and also some of your earlier work too. Like there's this painting that I'm like obsessed with, where there's a figure like laying in the ground, and then there's like faces all over the body.
Oh yeah. That
Can you talk
was,
about that painting and what that's about?
I think, one of the biggest paintings I've made. It's called Who All's in You. So it's just this figure and then
Hmm.
a bunch of different faces that are kind of exactly what you're saying, like who and what is in a person, like ancestral, friends, families. So it was just like a bunch of different faces within this figure.
And so it's sort of is literalization a word? Making literal this idea of ancestry, is that,
No, not even, kind of just like how you're
or maybe influence?
influence, and just like we're changing and being shaped all the time by who we're interacting with most, you
Hmm.
know? And it's like, yeah, of course, like you're Sydney, but like you're really Sydney with all these different influences, like things that have actually like created you.
Right.
So that's what I'm thinking about during it. But the faces aren't, some faces were I think from old photographs, and some faces were just people's faces that I always like. There's certain faces that I like love just to
Mhm.
look at. Um, and couples that, like, I think I put, you can't tell at all, but Leon Golub and Nancy Sparrow. Do you guys know them?
Mm.
Artist couple. It's like I put those two faces in it. And then let's see, I can't remember, someone who's Lebanese that I really like in it. And then I think I have like a really old one of my grandma's grandma. So like a lot of it's not literal in that
Yeah.
sense. I'm taking all these different things. And a lot of times I would just make the image and then kind of know what it was about afterwards. I feel like my work, it's really like an exercise in instinct, I'd say. Like as
Mhm.
fast as I can think of something, I want to put it in
Yeah.
rather
Mm.
than a long stage of planning. So like, and I feel like my work's gotten more and more abstract. Like I had all these like sketches. I didn't even like painting. I actually kind of hated it. But I just made like, so, and then when I went to grad school, everyone was like painting and like the style of the paint, the way you use the paint. And I was like, does that really matter? Like I really, was a hard thing for me to comprehend. So I was like, isn't it just about the thing, like the idea and this?
Right.
And I went to a ton of shows, but still didn't pick up on that like massive aspect of painting.
Mm.
And then now it's like I love paint.
But I feel like that's such an old, because I feel that way too, and it feels like such an old debate, right? That, the formalist kind of approach where it's all ultimately about the material, and then folks who are more, I don't know, dedicated to the subject matter. And I think that like struggle feels like a forever thing to me, and I definitely find myself in that thinking a lot, where I'm like, I actually care a lot about the subject matter. You said a lot that's interesting there. Because I am curious. I noticed that too, that it seems like you've moved toward the abstract. I was saying to Sydney that it reminded me a little bit. I don't know if you ever got into the desert transcendentalists like Agnes Pelton.
Yeah, I definitely know her work. Like I don't know too much about their life and stuff, but I've like flipped through a book at Ish's mom's house, and then I went to, I think it was at LACMA, a show, and
Yeah, I
their
got
view
to go with that.
style. Yeah. When I think when I either visited or first moved here, it was incredible. It was great.
I will say that in that show, I was like, it's clearly all about Agnes. Like the other work was fine.
Yeah, completely. I don't actually don't really remember who else was. That's why I said I was like, I'm like, how long ago was that? I don't quite remember it.
Yeah. But actually, on that point about subject matter and formal questions, and then like how much we think of that, like the formal answers as like affecting feeling or affecting something that's maybe outside of intellectualized thought. um I'm curious, like that point about immediacy you made, like is that an intentional sort of tapping into the unconscious mind? Is it like impatience, for lack of a better word, to like get the thing on the canvas, or how do you kind of identify that?
I think it's always been at the root of my work, just in different ways.
Mm.
Like I said, it's hard for me to directly answer something, but I think I can answer it
Okay.
through a long-winded answer. So I started painting. I'm 36 when I was like 27, maybe around
Mhm.
then. I'd always been around art. Um, my mom is from Haiti, Lebanese, but
Oh.
she's from there's like an Arab diaspora,
Mhm.
and my grandmother there was an artist, not like the way that artists are here, it's like showing all this stuff, but she really was like an artist. She had like a kiln, was constantly making things, and then she lived with us for part of the year every year, and so she'd always be like just literally making things all day long, like these crazy metal works. She even like all the food she made. I mean, that is like a tradition there, but like they would be like braided with flowers in the dough, like all
Yeah.
that's what she was up to.
Wow.
So I feel like I was around that all the time, just like dedication of an artist.
Mm.
Because I didn't actually know any artists growing up besides her. Um,
It's so
like
cool.
Houston definitely has an art scene, but not just anyone that I knew. Um, and then I was obsessed with art as a kid, which most kids are. I feel like the average kid's pretty into it at some point. And then I think it's just kind of evolved, and like my went to a academically rigorous school, and it just kind of like fell off the wayside, and I didn't really
Mm.
consider it also something to like I was good at to continue. And then in my early 20s, I got epilepsy in my temporal lobe. So
Mhm.
that's the part of the brain that's responsible for, I mean, among other things, like memories, feelings, perception. They also say that there's a sense of religiosity, not like obviously it's
Mm.
not like, like religious doctrines, but like religiosity as like an experience. I mean, if you've ever done like hallucinogens, it feels kind of similar in the brain. Like there's auras, um, and
Wow.
you'll hear music and see something. I don't have them anymore. But it's also a lot with I mean, it feels almost like the limbic system, but it's not like the flight or fight fear,
Mm.
If
Hmm.
like for like 2 days I'd be like really, really scared. Like as if something like scary had happened, or I'd feel great, like super excitable, and then
Mm.
it would end in a seizure. So I was having like maybe 4 of them a month. So it's kind of, suddenly everything was one way and then it became another way. And at
Scary.
the same time, I mean, honestly, at first they felt really good, which it sounds insane. It wasn't the first time I got one. Like at the gym, which I never go to the gym, but and I like fell on the, I like felt nauseous on the treadmill. And then I ran into the locker room, and I was like, I thought I was gonna throw up, um,
Mm.
pregnant or something. And then I just like I woke up, but I usually didn't. This was the only time I ever like woke up on the floor. They actually were quite, as far as seizures go, somewhat safe. But anyways, my friend called me, and I was like, I know like all the answers, and I understand everything. Like nothing matters. Are you okay? And I wrote this crazy note on my phone, and then I went home and I told my mom, and she was like, "What the fuck is wrong?" She was like, "We're going to the hospital." But she was like, "What?" And I was like, really like kind of like what? Like it was crazy. Like it's kind of like a lucid dream or something. And it
Mm.
was an amazing experience, and it was like, so like people describe it as like an ego death with drugs, I think.
Mm.
So anyways, when I went on medications, and they actually got like more unpleasant. I was kind of, at the time, my dad's a doctor, so he was like, "You're going on meds." I was like, maybe I'm not meant to be on these meds. Like if you think about it, like
Yeah.
a long time ago, people allegedly now theorize that some of the mystics had these.
Mm.
Because it is like it's like a very intense like religiosity. That's like where that maybe that's what you see in my work. I don't know.
Since you don't have them anymore, like do you have memories of like what would you see visuals, or like what would be going on in your brain or in your eye? Like I don't know, like what would be going on? Like where your eyes, I mean when you're having a seizure, like your body is shutting down in a way, and you're, yeah, I don't even know where my question is
It
rooted.
is shutting down, but it's also activating other areas.
Right.
So like certain things, like I can't continue a conversation, but it's not really shutting down. It's like certain things are being extremely stimulated,
Hmm.
like neurons are firing off, and certain things are like, I think that's like certain areas of the brain are being worked much more than they usually are or rarely are.
Right.
So, I mean, I can remember it. Like a lot of times I'd see bubbles and like hear music, and then I'd see like a person or I'd see a thing. So anyway, so I got those and I couldn't stop sketching. Like I make like 10 drawings a day, and it was a thing. I just like even though I went on medication, I was very charged. Like it was
Hmm.
it kind of stopped, honestly. And then at the same time, I feel like I had, so almost like, if you go somewhere and you have social anxiety, let's say, or something really good happens, it was like that, but like ripped open. So everything was so intense. Like it was very, very, very intensified. And I think I've maybe always had that a little bit. Um, at least according to my parents, they had a book about like the sensitive child and, like things like that. Um,
That sounds like
and
Ryan.
I was going to
yeah,
say that that's our whole
yeah,
family.
yeah, they're always like, and I'm like, okay. Um, but anyways, and so it was like everything was so magnified that it just like fluidly, like things came out drawing. It was almost like too much to keep inside, that like drawings just kind of streamed out. Like there wasn't much, it was extremely automatic. So it
Mm.
would be like, and even now if I exercise, I get like all these crazy ideas for an animation. I've never even made an animation. But so I don't know if it's like certain things were happening that made that happen. So I'd make like all these drawings, like a snail crying, or like all these just random things that would pour out. And then I was like really into art, really didn't like my marketing job. Like I never had like an urge to ever move up, which I realized, I looked around, I was like, oh, other people actually want to move up in these careers. Like, I just so couldn't care less. Like, and so like this thing, I moved to New York. I took a class in New York and lived with my sister. And then I moved there, and it was like this big secret. Like I just, as if I would randomly wanted to move to New York and like paint all the time. And I came out as an artist, and like no one really cared, but it was like this huge deal in my head.
Mm.
I was like, I want to be an artist. I was like crying. My sister was like, okay.
When were you in New York? Just out of curiosity.
2017, 3 years, 2000, maybe 2016 or 2017, towards the end of summer in 2019. And then I moved to Chicago and went to grad school. So I
Oh,
worked
cool.
for, yeah, it was kind of a great transition. It was kind of fun to have that art role before grad school.
I also went back. So I was in New York for basically right until you left, but also went to SAIC. And so I have a feeling we probably know some of the same folks. But what was the program that you did at SAIC?
I did painting and drawing.
Right on. I did the
Yeah.
low res program, is why I ask.
Oh,
They,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, which was a lot of fun. And I feel like I know that I saw you showed at Julius Caesar, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that Dana DiGiulio, who was one of the mentors that I had, who I just really loved, is one of the people who started that. She rules.
I wish I had gotten to know her. I think she used to be involved in it, but I don't think, as far as I know, that she is anymore. But she was maybe one of the founding people or something.
I want to say she and I don't. We won't put this on camera if I'm wrong, but I want to say that she and Molly, is it Zuckerman Hartung? I think they started it. Yeah, both. Yeah, badasses. Anyways, I really wanted to ask you, and I hope this isn't too corny of a question, but you're making me think about like notions of the muse, right? Like that idea of however we think of that, following a muse. And it feels sort of like that's what you're approaching in some of what you're saying, where it's like this kind of um, have you ever heard of like the Shakers, that religious group? It's this group of people, and they won't procreate. That's probably why you've never heard of them, because there's probably like seven of them left. And you can only join. But they're called the Shakers because they spin in circles and shake around to create this kind of euphoric state that sounds similar to what you're describing. And it's their way of like getting closer to God, right? And it feels like, yeah, you're talking about something similar with that idea of religiosity or spirituality, and shamans, and thinking about this connection to whatever that other is. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have kind of a defined idea of what that is, or is it all just kind of materialist and the brain does what it does kind of thing?
I think and you can tell me from my answering the question, by the way. I swear I was going to eventually get to your answer. It'll happen throughout the podcast, I swear.
I really want to tell you, sorry to interrupt you again, but I have a friend who nicknamed me Short Story Long, because so if you couldn't tell by the question I just asked, so don't worry about it.
My mom like a little stories, and she's always like, so long story short, and I'm like, why do we have to do this every time? I know when that's said, I'm like, oh no.
Here we go. Yeah.
But I mean, if someone else like classified as a muse, I can see that, but for me, not really, because it's not something I'm like. I guess if I were to think of a muse, I think that you were like looking at something outside of yourself, maybe like if this is you and you have a muse,
Sure.
and it more just feels like it's something that kind of naturally flows out from within.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a lot of my practice is like an attempt. I mean, maybe not even an attempt, because sometimes you have like that internal war with yourself and like that internal struggle, but just being open to what's going to come out.
Yep.
I feel like that takes a lot of trust, and in some ways, I feel like by the end, the painting's always that, but there can be like a fight, like a struggle to just like open that channel, or if you open it and you're like, it looks so good, so I don't want to mess it up. But you're like, so I feel like a lot of my work is just really following like the body as much as I possibly can. And it used to start off like at first my portfolio to get into grad school was just my drawings, and they're mostly of like seizures. Like there was a figure floating above a bed. I don't think they're on this Instagram, my old Instagram, whatever, but a figure floating above the bed, and like a bunch of people sort of what I would interpret like a bunch of men at a table each having a seizure in their own world. So it was really literal. And it was from drawings I made. And the painting was just almost like a paint by numbers. Like I'd be like, how many hours left do I have? Like looking at the drawing and filling it in kind of thing. And then in grad school, everyone was like, how you paint? And I was very annoyed by that. But then I guess it worked or something. I mean, I think also if you're in the studio so much, you're naturally like, what happens when I do this? Rather than just having like a finite time of trying to illustrate a picture. So then I started painting without drawings. So it became much more of a combination. And then I started eventually, like right when I think of something, I think like bird, and I try to paint a bird really fast, or I'd have some photographic references and I'd be like, that feels good. And then if I'd see bird, I might be like, oh, well, now I thought of worm. And then I randomly thought of a pot. So it's a bird cooking a worm, something like that. I picked that up, but these things, I really listened to like every word that came in. And then a lot of the times I would end up, like you get, when you start to think like, oh, I hope this works out well in your painting, like it's like you're excited and then you make the thing and you're like, that looks good, so I'm going to paint around that thing. Does that happen to you guys kind of?
Yeah.
But I want to save it, and things start getting really like over, like I can't remember what globe of the brain, but the logical brain kind of takes over.
Yes. That's when the kill your darlings thing comes in, right? Where I feel that's always, or most often, the thing you have to destroy to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, and that's like the next thing I was going to say is then sometimes, I smear a face or destroy it and I'd be like, oh, I like that, how that actually looks now. I thought I was just destroying. I feel like a really intense, like letting go. Sounds also like, I mean, it sounds a bit dramatic, but I'm like, I really want to make this so good. And you're like holding on to like wanting to feel good and wanting to be good. And then I destroy it. like, oh, thank God. Like, I feel like a deep replenishing and letting go. And then I like it more. It was really, it's like bodily. So I think what's happened is then like that destroying started to kind of take over my practice.
Hmm.
Like that would be the part that I'd feel best at. So I kind of started to follow that more. Um, and that would usually with my hands, you know, with gloves or a palette knife or something like that. And then now it's gotten to the point where I'm painting only with my hands.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so
Is that part of where the move toward abstraction has come from?
yeah, I think that's what happened actually. Because I've actually tried to make figures like, you know, I go through this whole dramatic thing and I'm like, am I just doing abstraction because abstraction's in? And then I'll try to make a figure and then I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel right. You know, like it's like
Yeah,
you make things so dramatic in your head about like, I feel like art becomes such like a ego thing. I don't even mean in, you know, like it is an act where you are like looking in the mirror all the time.
I think, you said something about the incentives. I can't quite remember how you phrased it, but something about the why of where, oh, it was the Instagram thing, the gripes, that there's all of this outside influence, all of this expectation and flattening that happens with the work. And I think part of what's so difficult about that is people take it for granted and think that that's the way it is done. Right. So I think you're actually talking about a much more sort of ancient and classic way of approaching art, right? Where it is the mirror, but it's also like communing. That's why I was curious about like, so it's somatic and embodied, but it sounds like it's also, I don't know what the right word is for that thing, but like it is also this more woo woo
Yeah.
category.
I wanted to ask you, is there ever a point where you're like painting and in the search, because it sounds like you're searching. I mean, things are coming to your mind, you're painting them, but it also sounds like you're searching, or am I wrong?
Oh
And
yeah.
if
Yeah.
you are searching, do you like what happens if you aren't finding the thing that you don't know what it is?
Like literally what's been happening, like ever since, like honestly, at first I felt like the abstraction was easier and I was like, this is great. And then now I'm like, oh my God, the soul searching is intense.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I've tried to write a little more about it because it's funny. Have an artist educational platform, whatever you want to call it. It's a group and we're critiquing our work and doing other things. And right now it's a professional practice class. And we're working on our artist statements. And I feel like I had a good artist statement and now it's completely different. I'm like, I need to hone this.
Yeah.
So I've been doing the things that we're going to do in class. It's hard, but yeah, the searching. So yes, it is. I feel like I was reading something the other day and it talks about like being in the woods and it almost feels like I'm being, because there's so much of the unknown. Like I'm constantly with the unknown. And it's kind of painful because I'm like worrying. I'm like, is this going to be good? Is this going to be, because I have no idea what it is. So it's like extreme trust. And I think also there's time restraints in art. It's like I could mush around this painting forever. It feels like it's like day after day. It's not ending and there's a lot of destroying it too. But then there's like an uncovering. I paint really subtractively. So I use essentially like mineral spirits to remove paint, but it's a lot of layering. And then I remove it. When I remove it, I'm like, oh, I like how that looks. But then I might have to destroy it later, kind of like the killing your darling thing. But it definitely is a lot of also trust that I'll just finish it in time. So I feel like it's been like an exercise in like confident building and like trusting the unknown. But anyway, so I was reading something and it was about like being in the woods and I guess if I think about it, it's like if I dropped off in the woods and I have no idea where I'm going and I have to like find the way out and I could either like wander around and like look at all like the beautiful things and like really like breathe and be in the forest, or I could like panic and try to find the way out.
Right.
Mm.
So it's like I have to like trust, but it's definitely like on an inner level more like, oh my God. But it's
Right.
also in some ways like really satisfying too, because it is like an exercise, like I said, like an exercise in instinct and like really trusting. It's like I'm gonna go in and like do my job. And my job is like be in front of this painting and paint. It's not to like think about like who's better than me or who I'm better than and like what I want at the end of this. It's really like eliminating like the goal part. And like trusting that like if I'm trying my best and working hard day in, day out, it'll work. Um, Another thing I brought up in class is Jack Whitten. he Jack Whitten, I know you guys probably know who he is, but he's an abstract artist, and he ended up I just saw his retrospective in New York, I think at like MoMA. And he did like a ton of experimentation, and like had like a mental breakdown at one point, was hospitalized and all this stuff. But he talks about how you have to like mentally and physically fit. And for him, he'd have all these different notes, like as an artist, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, physically it could just be like, I don't mean like at the gym, but like just like calming. For me, it's like calming myself and like taking care of myself and be like, I'm really trying to be more compassionate and like really find that place of like calm and centering in myself, and then like have that onto the canvas, not for how it's going to look, but just I'm like, do I want to do this every day and like feel like shit? Or, or do I want to like sink in and like enjoy this and like not focus so much on how well I'm doing? So that's kind of, and then he also talks about like locate, for him, he's like, painting is locating myself in space. And I almost feel like now my painting is like a recording of just like, I wouldn't say performance, but someone else told me that. And like, she's a performance artist, but you know, like I'm doing this and like, it's just going to look how it looks at the end of the day.
Right.
And then I'm going to go again and look how it looks at the end of that day. And like, hopefully at some point it's going to feel done.
Right. I just had a like Zoom call with my old professor from grad school, and something he said, which I really loved, is he was like, painting is a question, not an articulate question, but it's a question. And I don't know,
Yeah.
like sometimes people just say things, or I don't know, that they just say things, and I'm like, wow, I love how you worded that, you know, like that just made so much sense to me. But anyway, that not really a question, just my thought.
Oh, no, I love that quote.
I wonder about the sort of embodied somatic thing that you're talking about, and that question of like whether or not it's the recording of a performance, or maybe that's not a question. The reality of it being a recording of a performance. Like, how do you think about that as far as the viewer? Meaning that that's the next sort of physical relationship to it, right? Is that you've got another human being or human beings who are experiencing the work, or do you just not? Is that not something you really sweat?
You know, obviously it goes in and out of my head, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how it's going to be received. And that's kind of where, you know, like feeling good enough comes from, like those feelings of
Yes.
like being enough, feeling enough. You know, obviously that's because there's someone else at the other end that I feel like is judging that. But I try to just, since this is really work that's like coming out of the core, um, as best I can, not think of it while I'm painting.
Well, I might have phrased it in a weird way, and we don't necessarily need to dwell on it, but just I don't necessarily mean like the reception of it. I kind of mean the physicality and the experience of it, if that distinction makes sense. So not like, do people like it, or is this saleable or something, but more along the lines of like, are they feeling something in their bodies? Like, is that something that you worry about at all, or it's kind of not your problem at that point?
Not really, no. No, I
Okay.
don't think I would that too much. Not, at least not that specifically. Like, I want people to connect with it.
Uh-huh.
No, but I mean, I really do believe that if you really connect with your own work, like not everybody, it doesn't even have to be the majority, like there are just going to be people that connect with it. Like we're not
100%.
that different than each other. Like we are, but
Yeah.
we aren't.
I'm realizing that because we're already approaching one, we probably should get to category 2.
Yes, yes.
So good stuff. Okay, yeah. Good stuff is what feels exciting, alive, or worth paying attention to right now.
I mean, I I had a hard time with right now. Maybe I was focusing too much on contemporary. At first, I was like, I can't think of anything. I feel like there's always kind of like, there's always good stuff to be excited about. Um, like connections you make with other artists and like really good conversations you have. I can think of that definitely, these timeless things that like make us feel more alive as people and like things that have this vitality in them. Um, I mean, artists that I think are worth paying attention to, and totally person to person, but I guess two people that I sent you guys their names. Ali Cherry, it's Lebanese artist, and then Ali Ayal, an Iraqi artist. Um, I think just like it's really hard to make the work they're making.
Yeah.
Like it's not like difficult subject matter and not just political violence, where it's like it was, or not even like ancestral. It's like literally their actual life. Like Ali Ayal, he was in the Hammer. I think he's gonna have a solo museum show. He's also really nice. He's like so nice. I met him like very briefly. Um, I actually DM'd him to say like I really love your work, and I accidentally sent this like dancing emoji. But he like it was crazy, and I already sent it. I didn't want to like that was an accident. He just didn't question it. It was like thank you, like yours too, and I was like okay. But he's just like he's incredible. During the Iraq War, his father vanished. They went and took him from his house. And he was 9 and he like lost his childhood. So he makes all these paintings from memory, and they're just like, so like, that's an example of, you're saying like, how does the audience feel like? They feel like so poignant, but also tender. Cause I think, it's from the eyes of a child. Like, I hope I'm not, what I'm saying, I hope is roughly, that was, I think, correct. But what I remember, he had a painting of a Ferris wheel, and his mom took him, maybe siblings, I'm not sure, to go to the Ferris wheel. And they're like, I want you to remember this, because it was like one of the last times she knew, she was an adult and she knew what was happening, that they were going to have like this kind of pure childhood memory. And they're kind of painted in like, there's a little bit of like Philip Dustin influence, at least that I'm detecting, maybe because of my own references, but they're sort of illustrative somewhat, but then also painterly and beautiful. And they're just like really tender and poignant. And I'm like, it takes a lot to make that work.
Right.
I'm sure it's work he also just has to make. But it's like I'm over here at the canvas and I'm like, oh, it feels good. And I'm like, like I have sadness from things that I'm sure gets into the painting, but like, it's hard work to make. And I think it's so relevant right now with what's happening. It's like, once again, US intervention, like the tale as old as time, which a lot of times in the art world is being very pushed down and repressed. So I'm happy that his is not at all. He's actually receiving a lot of critical acclaim, and people are really loving his work. And then the other artist, Ollie Cherry, his work's just like incredible. I like love it. I love sculpture. Especially I love looking at things and like, how did they do that? And he's made these like massive soldiers out of mud. He's also a filmmaker. I haven't seen any of his film or video work. And then he sources these artifacts, like masks and different things. I think maybe they're after like stolen artifacts. I'm not totally sure about that part, but he's a Lebanese artist. I think he's based in Paris now. He was born in Beirut. So he's been making this work for years. And then last year, his parents were killed by an airstrike.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a current lived reality. I know I'm taking like a depressing turn, but I just feel like they're worth paying attention to, especially with how much censorship there's in the art world. And I will say there has always been censorship in the art world and across industries.
Yeah.
But he's showing at Almin Rash, Ali Cherry's having like also doing really well. So it's also nice to see that these people are having these shows and like this intense emotive work. And both of their work's also really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that I actually really appreciate that for that good stuff category. You're talking about artists who are working and thinking about their real life conditions and the conditions of the world, because I think there can be this tendency, and in a way I would say that's part of the project of what we're doing, is to not just like stay in the fluffy, because I think there's a lot of incentive in the art world to keep it surface, right?
Yeah.
So that's just to say, like, I think that's actually fantastic.
Yes, I agree with Ryan, but also just to say that I can also see that like their like visual influences for you too, because Ali Cherry, their sculptures remind me of your little wooden sculptures, like the heads. And then also Ali Ayal, I think like the visuals, like things sort of like seeping into each other and like, images like colliding. I see that in your work too. So I just wanted to point that out, that I see that they're inspiring to you. But yes, let's go on to Ghosts. So Ghosts is, I mean, we sort of touched on this with those artists, but influences, histories, and lingering presences shaping your current work. They could also be like art historical or just like all time favorite artists that you really love.
I mean, I guess for like a person I've always loved since I started painting, Ferdinand Hodler. I think I'm saying his last name correctly.
How did you come to know his work?
I don't know. I actually don't know because he's one of the first, and I don't feel like when I started making art, I was really even like well versed in art history at all. But I'm assuming maybe I was at the Met and saw a painting and loved it, and then looked him up and bought a book. He has one, and it's like a bunch of small figures, and then I think you'd have to look it up. I think a tall figure, but it doesn't tell us much. But they're just like incredible. I'm obsessed with them. He had like a crazy life at one point. I think he had 13 siblings. Like both of his parents passed away from, I can't remember what siblings passed. Like, but then there's so much joy in them. Like he has a lot that are like really sad. Like the theme of death is really present and mortality, but then the theme of life is so intense too. It's like these vast, beautiful landscapes. So I don't know. They're just like the way he does his portraiture is incredible. His landscapes are incredible. He also at the time invented this term called parallelism, and it was about the unity of nature. And I feel like that's always been pretty prevalent in my work. So I feel like a connection to that. Even, I mean, I feel like I've always had like an inherent sense of symmetry.
The thing I was thinking to ask you though is about that landscape quality, because I think that, even or perhaps especially in the more recent work, it seems really tied to landscape. I'm thinking about how like Joan Mitchell, would actually talk about her abstraction as landscape. And I'm curious, like, are you thinking about forms in that way when you're making the work that's all, painted with your hands, and are you thinking about it as fields and valleys and all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it just forms into that. I will say, ever since I started painting, especially my very first paintings, I've always had a tendency to do like a horizon line. It's like
Yeah.
a horizon line, and naturally a landscape comes into place. And now they've kind of been going like even more above it. I'm like, oh God, how do I handle that? But I think definitely a lot of also just like when I'm making these kind of like organic forms, kind of like mandalas, like
Mm.
5 petals kind of start to form, and it starts to look like this and then that with. So, sometimes I'll tell people it's sort of like an interior landscape, like an interiority. And I like love nature. I feel like I've had this sort of, since I moved to LA, I do feel like I can see like the divine in nature almost the most, especially when I'm thinking of things happening in the world. I'm like, oh, there's nature, which things happen in nature. Nature's not all like, sweet or anything, but I feel like this, like I can breathe deeply when I'm like, and I feel like it kind of does come into the work, and I'll start to even see plants in LA, like this strange pointy ones. I'm like, oh, I think I painted that. So I think maybe just like looking really closely and like appreciating it. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's one of the things that like really like deeply calms me.
Yeah, there feels like sort of a connection in what you were just saying about nature and that kind of duality, right?
Yeah.
The beauty and the like bleak horror feels connected to some of the other things that you've talked about, whether that's
Yeah, but I don't even really think of nature in the bleak horror way. I actually kind of only think of the positives about it. Like,
mm,
like I guess when I'm thinking, it's more something I can like very deeply like appreciate and connect with.
yeah.
I like how you said inner landscape because I was telling Ryan that also some of your works, especially the more abstract ones, feel kind of cellular to me, but like
Yeah,
cellular landscape. Or there's like these or I mean, I feel like I'm looking at a microscope, but it's magical microscope of the land, if that makes sense.
huge compliment.
Oh,
Because
cool.
someone, yeah, the word magics lately, I've been more interested in things that like feel really magical, and I think that's what I
Mm,
feel when I'm looking at nature. I'm like, how did this just exist? Like with all the things that we make, we cannot make something this amazing.
yeah.
Right.
And I actually love like I mean, I'm literally telling you I love landscapes of paintings, but it still can't give me the feeling of like when I look at this would be a different feeling that I like absolutely love. It's usually a take on nature, not like a hyper realist, And I think there's like just something really magical about nature. Um, and it's like just so, I don't know, it's just like incredible, especially in LA. Like the foliage is just crazy. Like I moved here and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know I was gonna have this like tropical with desert.
It made me remember that you'd mentioned Charles Birchfield, who I
Yeah.
feel like when we think about magic and we think about nature, like, yeah, he's very directly approaching that. And I don't know, go off about Charles Birchfield if you want to.
Charles Birchfield, I actually only found out who was maybe a year ago. And I'm just like so obsessed with him. And then I found out recently, I was reading more about him. I guess I'll mention two things. So a lot of those little, I feel like my work's also extremely rooted in emotion, like
Mm.
emotion in the body. So a lot of those little symbols that he was making, and I've kind of myself been like, I kind of want to make like my own language. And I was like, I tried it and I was like, it's contrived and, like all those things, but not my own language. But I feel like I've kind of begun to have more of a visual language. Like
Mm.
certain things just feel the same. It's sort of when I'm feeling a certain way. But anyways, I was looking at Charles Birchfield and those were like symbols for emotions. So he had, and not just emotions, but he had one about, I hope I pronounced it right, like imbecility, like foolishness. Like there was a certain emotion he had for foolishness or a certain symbol. And it was like all this whole secret language and then some for like desire. And it's like all those things that were so magical were like his own things that he formed in relation to an emotional language. And I found that out and I was like, oh my God, I love you even more. I mean, I think he was like really popular in what, like the 1940s or 1920s or something, but I think he was late 1800s to like mid 1900s. But
Yeah, he's kind of like the wacky regionalist or something. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he made his original drawings, or think a little bit more just literal drawings or gouaches and watercolors. So he'd make like, one, it would be like of like a few trees or something. And then he went back like decades later and he started adding to them. And that's how they became these vast magical things they were from. And he connects the papers. Like I have a book and it
Ooh.
shows it's like number one that he made. Then he attached number two. Then he attached number three. So he was working on like separate pieces that he'd put together that were like decades old that he transformed into this more surreal, magical landscape.
Speaking of time, it's like when have you ever returned to something? Do you ever do that? Because I'm like that.
Yeah.
You do,
Yeah.
okay? 'Cause that to me sounds like such a different era. But so you'll go back to older work and kind of
Yeah.
revise it or revisit.
Yeah. I mean, I've shown things, um, and then I get them back and I'm like, I didn't like that much. Like, so I'll just go back into it and completely change it, and then I'll just do it again. I'm like, especially as painters, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I feel like there's this expectation of like new work, new work, new work.
Yeah,
Um, Definitely, yeah, I go into old stuff a lot. Especially I've been using linen. I'm like, I'm not wasting this,
yeah.
Right.
And now that I do a lot of layering, it's kind of helpful because I'm like, oh, I have all these layers. Like I don't even remember what was under here, and I can like unveil it, and that's kind of exciting. So yeah, sometimes I'm like, I'm just done. Can't do this anymore. Done like 5 paintings on top of this and don't like it, so I'll just give it up. But for the most part, I'm definitely going into old work.
That might actually be a good segue into the guts category, which is meant to be about process and just, you've already sort of touched on a few things, but using linen, but also revisiting work. What's the actual prompt? Let me read it. It just process risk and what it actually takes to make the work. So you can handle that
Yeah.
however you want.
I mean, I feel like I've intermittently answered it just in terms like I was saying the Jack Whitten thing. Like I feel like more now I'm trying to concentrate too on what I'm doing outside of the studio as well as inside of the studio. And really try to honestly relax a little bit more. When I say relax, I mean like recenter, reground, like look at Instagram less. What am I reading? What am I like before the studio? We're gonna do this in class, sitting but ritual. Like am I gonna like excite myself and like I don't know, we have mini trampolines. Like am I gonna like jump on it a lot, or am I gonna meditate, or am I gonna like write a little note to myself? So I feel like I'm trying to be more intentional with my time because time just goes by so fast. But yeah, in terms of process, I mean, kind of what we've been talking about with, like using my hands. I mean, I think risk is just literal risk of like what I'm doing in the painting. And it feels like risk is almost like taken over my work a bit. But I wonder if that's also going to change because I have a new way of working. My way of working evolves a lot. I don't know if I'll land on a way of working that then will last like decades, but I think just really going into the unknown and being comfortable with that, like it's a
Right.
personal risk. So I'm trying to make that feel like less of a risk every day. Because right now it does feel like a risk for the most part. Where at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm disappointed I didn't finish it. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get this is not that big of a risk. It's just not that big of a risk. It's just a feeling. Like, yes, it's my profession and it matters to me. But at the same time, like you're just gonna go in and do your job and then you're gonna leave. And you're gonna go in again. And then so I'm kind of trying to make this whole thing a little bit like less of a massive risk by just embracing the risk and making it not a risk, which I know is very meta.
Well, I'm thinking it takes a lot of courage to do that. Because, yeah, I mean, to me, I'm like, I don't want to throw you off of that mission to feel more comfortable with the risk by saying anything. But, like, I will say that what you're describing, that process feels like all risk. And that is a really, yeah, difficult and brave way to work. And to me, it's like maybe it, going into that risk really deeply brings up new risks, right? So it's like, I suspect as soon as you're like, I'm good now, I'm at work, I'm doing my thing, some other thing will
Yeah.
come.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, since Ish came in, do y'all go to the studio together, or is it like, okay, I need space, don't talk to me? Like, what's the vibe
Yes.
when y'all?
We are.
Okay, so y'all are in there
So it's like
together making the work. Okay,
we're in
that's
there
great.
together. Definitely. Sometimes we'll be doing different things. Thank God we actually at the old studio now because he was working at home a lot because he just couldn't stand it anymore. He's
Mhm.
been working on a lot of like really small paintings, so it's easier for him to just do it at the table. And I'm glad that's over because he's also like taking care of our house, taking over our house. And I was like, but so with the new studio, I mean, we have like a couch. It's much more comfortable. So I feel like he's like hanging out. We're used to doing everything with each other, so it's pretty natural.
Okay, so growth.
What do you envision, as far as the work goes, or really anything else that you want to talk about?
I mean, one of the growth things is like being comfortable with more risk, like I mentioned, just like wanting to enjoy myself more. Um, like while, and in some ways I think that can actually make me work harder, you know?
Mm.
And I'm also wanting to focus on focusing, like improving my focus while I'm working. And then the other day, my friend who also met her through Ouroboros, ZZ Krebs, she's a sculptor. She taught me how to do stone carving.
Ooh.
Um, yes. And so I really have gotten like obsessed. Like I had a dream of just me just like carving a stone in my dream. After the lesson, it wasn't like a foretelling dream or anything, but so I'm really excited about that. I love learning new things. I think it also makes me take a break from painting. And when like you're learning, you can't overthink things as much, Like you can't make something amazing if you're literally learning how to use the tools.
Yep.
So I'm pretty excited for that. And I liked making you into my wood sculptures. I liked doing those, but I also felt like there was something not quite right with the medium for me because it's hard to describe. But I've always kind of been interested in sculpture, so we'll see how this goes. But so far, it's been like very, very fun. And it's fun, like her tools were like ancient, like they're like I think like 200 years old or something. And I was like, it's just fun. And she showed me this amazing artist named I think it's Gonzalo Fonsescu. He's amazing. And her mom dated him, which is cool. Um,
And he's a stone carver. That's
Stone
the
carver, yes, incredible. And if you haven't seen them too, Louise Bourgeois
yeah.
has amazing stone carvings. Like they're so good. She's having a lot of assistance, but still. So I guess growth, like learning a new medium, continuing making work. I do feel like these abstract works may, I don't know if they'll get figured. I don't know. I feel like there's things that almost happen, they don't happen. I'm sure that happens in your work too. You sort of see something forming. So I guess I don't know. Kind of, going into the unknown.
Yeah, I'm thinking for what this is worth about the solidity of those, you know, natural, like whether it's a stone or a block of wood, and trying to shape that by pulling away, like that sort of subtractive versus additive process, right, of the painting. Um, just thinking about how the wood sculpture is more recent.
No, I haven't even made one in maybe 2 years.
Okay, well, I was going to say it feels connected to that older work just because it is more
Yeah,
figurative.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. So with
yeah.
the stone carving you're envisioning, do you picture that as more figurative and kind of, you know, the recognizable world, or do you think it might go abstract?
I don't know. I mean, at first I was like, I really want to make a face, but I don't know if I was also like wanting to make a face because I thought a face would be more like kind of, you sort of stop and you see a face like a thing. I feel like I'll probably try a face if it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be intuitive with stone carving, but already I was just doing it intuitively, and I was like, I probably should make a drawing.
Hmm.
At least like to start, like I should probably try and make a drawing. Um, so I don't know. I don't know.
Have you ever seen that clip of Louise Bourgeois smashing the sculptures that she doesn't like?
Oh my god, yeah, and she's like such a big baby, and she like pushes them over the edge of her table and just like, breaks it. And I'm like, she is so unhinged. I love her, but I'm oh my god.
That could be a good process, maybe, if you're trying to creation through destruction and all that.
He had an assistant cleaning that up.
That's
For
I'm
sure.
like,
funny.
come clean it up.
Do we want to do the hard plug? I feel like something we can,
Oh yes, do the
like
hard
clip
plug.
out. Yeah.
Hard plug for Ouroboros, right?
Hmm.
Yes.
And
And also
anything
like
else
your
you want to plug?
Instagrams.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think if they go well, I'll show the sculptures at Untitled in Houston. Are you gonna go, Sydney? Maybe.
When is that happening? I feel like I should know.
No, you don't need to know. Beginning of October, first weekend of October.
Okay.
Oh.
Honestly, I would love to visit if you're going to be there.
Yeah, we'll be there if I finish the
Okay.
sculptures. I was just like, I think they wanted me to do the wood, and I was like, I just don't want to do that. Just don't want
Mm,
to. Like I'm not that into it anymore. And I feel like I was getting excited to do this, so I'm like, hopefully I can make some that I will show. So that's what's upcoming next in terms of showing work. And then to plug Ouroboros, Ouroboros has been great. I mean, we've loved it. I feel like it's been like amazing for my own practice. We're on our 8th class and our first time doing professional development. That's how I know Sydney.
Hmm.
Um, I've made tons of friends. We are visiting Ish's grandmother, who's 98 in England, and we met up with someone who did Ouroboros. She's from Bahrain and she's in London, and we had a dinner. And I was like, I forgot that I hadn't met you in the flesh before this because it was so fun. But yeah, it's been great. We have like up to 10 artists in each cohort. We're critiquing work, but I feel like it involves into more personal conversations too. And then in our traditional class, it's each artist receives 2 critiques, a gallery comes and visits, and we do optional exercises. Um, I think probably my favorite thing, I think in this current group, everyone is first and foremost an artist. Obviously, some people are doing other jobs, but I think in the past we've had a social worker from a girl that I knew in high school. And I just kind of reached out and I was like, I like your watercolors. They're really cool. Would you want to do it? And she's not a social worker. We've had a social worker, but she's a public defender.
mm,
And she's like, I always kind of secretly wanted to go to art school and I know I'm not a real artist. And then we had people that like, of course, yeah, it becomes like a really supportive environment. And
yeah.
like a lot of, I think the ego's left out and someone could be really nervous about for the first time ever showing their work or even showing their work to their friend, to someone who has a friend of mine who did it, had a solo booth at Art Basel last year, Nora Sydney.
Oh yes, I
And
remember.
she's self-conscious about
Dang.
something in her practice, or she has these sculptures that she's making. And it's interesting because like that person's willing to take as much advice from someone who doesn't show as and vice versa. So I feel like it's just made like a nice dynamic. We've been lucky and knocking on wood, but everyone's been really nice and supportive in the class.
Hmm.
Which is interesting because now I'm at the point where I know 2 people in the current class, but I only know them through a previous class in Ouroboros. At first it was like a mix of like people I know and some friends. And now it's evolved into no one I know, and it's still felt like we're becoming friends.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which I was also nervous about because at first, after the first few classes, I was like, we have to have like a brick and mortar or else this isn't a real thing. And that's so expensive that I actually feel like we would have to like jack up the price. And I think right now, when I've looked at other online schools, it's like a third of the price, which is something I would want to hold on to as much as I can. I mean, at some point, and we'll see, we'll just see what happens. But I think it's allowed for a lot of like serious artists to join who are also, it's just a price point that I think has brought in like people that have gotten something out of it and haven't been like freaking their bank account for it.
No, yeah, I agree. I feel like Ouroboros is really affordable, and I mean, this is the second time I'm doing it, and I'm doing it because I feel like y'all being Ish and you, um, I feel like you can tell that you are really passionate and you care and you like I can feel the effort and energy that you put into like meeting everybody and you're like really curious about meeting other artists. But also y'all are artists yourselves, so it's just like relatable. And I feel like y'all's critiques, I've gotten feedback that I haven't experienced in other like clubs. So yeah, I just feel like it's really raw and a great experience to meet so many people. So I just wanted to add that at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's great your feedback.
I just wanted to ask two things about it. And I know Sydney can tell me at some point more, but I'm curious about the structure of like how the crits go, like how long each person talks, and then also just how you landed on the name.
So in terms of the critiques, we can't reveal too much, but no, I'm joking. It's actually, I took a sculpture class in grad school and it was like an incredible class. They made me take advanced sculpture. I'd never really done sculpture, but anyways, and I feel like the thing that I actually learned more from how I teach in that class than any other class at SAIC. It was an undergrad class. Um, and so I feel like a big part of that we try to focus on is like looking and seeing the work before forming judgments, rather than going straight in. Because I mean, I feel like you should be able to critique a piece of work that you don't like and give a lot of really good feedback. I don't even mean like good, like positive, but like constructive feedback. It's like ultimately I want to give feedback to Sydney on the type of work she wants to make. And I think in critique, a lot of times, at least in my experience, it didn't go that way because of people's aesthetic judgments, or like, are they prioritizing political work? Are they prioritizing beauty? And it's like, I don't, it doesn't really matter. It's like, if I'm really going to stop and see, I'm probably going to interpret what Ryan's interested in if I like just look at first. So I think we've tried to make that a part of the critique that then does go into feedback and criticism. But really try to like get in the shoes of the artist. And then they're about 30 minutes, depending on the number of the group, between 25 and 30 minutes. They usually go over a few minutes what we plan on. And the class always runs over like a few minutes, but I think that's fun.
That's a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, in the traditional class, 2 critiques. This one's a bit different, but also 2 critiques. And then we have, in this class, we'll have a visiting gallerist and a visiting artist. And we try to pick an artist that's, a little bit older and who's kind of been through a few different cycles. Cause I feel like artists have cycles of like, no selling, no selling. But yeah, so. And then how did we land on a name? I feel like Ish was the most helpful with names. I feel like Ish has a lot of knowledge on like, I'll still be like, how did you know about that? And I feel like both of his parents are experimental filmmakers. He also remembers things. He remembers things he learned from high school. Like, I don't remember anything I learned in high school. Like, truly, like I told you, I've read so much about Bill Jensen, I can't remember his name. So at first we're debating Elysian, and we thought that sounded a little too Lord of the Ringsy. And it's also a park like right near our house, which is cool, but it's also so like LA. Ouroboros is an infinite cycle. It's a snake eating its tail. and I saw like an old ancient emblem of it that I really loved, but also we're thinking like infinite knowledge. Like you go to school and it's like you learn all this stuff and then that's it. And now you're a professional and you just need to focus on showing. But really, art is just like, I mean, living is just a process. Like we're constantly learning. We're constantly, I don't even want to use the word failing, but like learning, being dissatisfied, learning more. And I feel like why we make art ultimately is to create. Yes, showing it's very gratifying. Like the real reason we do it is the actual creation of it. And a lot of these conversations are about that. We do include the professional components because like that's just the other end of the spectrum.
Sure.
But we want to also foster as much as we can. We want to balance like fostering in your internal world. And that's where I think feeling good, like that focus I've been trying to have. Cause like when I'm only focusing so much more on the professional components, I lose that. I feel kind of bad. So it's like, how can I really create a balance? How can I really foster this inner dialogue and not even feel like good about like happy work, but feel like I'm being true to myself and like honoring that while also interacting in the professional commercial art world.
Right.
Yeah, it's the forever battle. So appropriate symbol. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again. And thanks for taking all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.